students, today we're going to be talking about how to properly format your in-text citations and your works cited page so that they match up. For this essay, like all the essays that you'll be writing in this class, you'll need to use quotations from the readings and from the videos that we watch to support your points that you make in your essay. In this video, I'm going to show you how to integrate a quotation into your paragraph, cite the quotation, and then make sure that the entry on your works cited page corresponds with that citation. So I am sharing my screen with you so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So in-text citations and the works cited page. Okay, so here you can see a rough draft of a paragraph that a student wrote for this assignment. As you can see from the topic sentence, which is the sentence right here, the topic of this paragraph is going to be about the idea that money doesn't buy happiness, which is one of the ideas we've been discussing in our class. And as the paragraph will show, money can even cause some problems rather than buying happiness. So this writer has written a paragraph that looks more closely at the topic. And as we can see from a quick scan of the paragraph, the writer has included a few quotations or references to readings. I'm just looking at some of these quotations and references within the paragraph. So this writer has included some good evidence to support their point. For now, I want to focus on how the writer has integrated and cited the quotations. So starting kind of backwards first, let's look at this third quotation first. It says, Graham Hill, the author of Living with Less, quickly learned that materialistic things didn't make him happy. Remember what you read last week about sandwiching quotations. Just like the reading said, this student who's written this paragraph isn't letting this quote stand on their own. She knows that it's important to tell the reader where the quote came from and who said it, since that's going to lend more credibility to the quote and to the paragraph. So the reader has introduced this quote with a phrase that tells us where the quote came from. So we see that phrase here. Graham Hill, author of Living with Less, quickly learned that materialistic things don't make him happy, and argues that. So now we can see where this quote came from, and we can also see that Graham Hill, the author, also wrote an article about this, and I believe he also wrote a book about this topic, which gives it a little bit more credibility. You can also, of course, introduce a quote with a really quick, simple signal phrase like, according to Graham Hill. So that according to is always a good way to introduce a quote. But here the author has given us a little more information. So now as the reader, I can immediately see at the beginning of the sentence who said the quote, and I know just where it came from. That gives the quote more credibility and more weight. And then the writer goes into the quote. So Graham Hill argues that there isn't any indication that any of these things actually make anyone happier. In fact, it seems the reverse may be true. So this quote directly supports the idea in the topic sentence. So the quote's supporting the idea that things that usually cost money don't always make us happy, and in fact may often make us less happy. So good, the writer's used a really good quote that supports the topic sentence, but wait, the writer is not done yet. She knows that she still has a couple of really important things to do to finish up with the quote. So what's the next thing that this writer needs to do? Well, she needs to include a citation right here at the end of the quote that lets us know who the author of the article is, and if there was a page number, which there isn't here because this is an online article, she would also need to include the page number. Also, if there was no author's name, so let's say that we had an article that didn't have an author's name, but would just have the article title, then this would be just the article title rather than the author's name here. But in this case, we know who the author is, so we're going to include the author's last name. All right, so we have the introduction to the quote. We have the quote itself, and we have the citation. Are we done yet? No, not quite yet. So remember that when we're sandwiching a quotation, you also need to include some analysis or some explanation of what the quote means or how the quote supports the topic sentence. And so that is what the writer is doing here at the end when the writer says he explains, et cetera, that he was very unhappy when he owned the latest technology in multiple houses, and he noticed that material things made life more stressful for him. So that's the explanation of that quote. She actually goes on to explain a little bit more, but I wasn't able to fit that all on the page. And so you can see also, as I said earlier, that the writer has included a couple of other examples from the two other readings that they've done, one by Richard Layard, and one by Tim Kasser. So there's a lot of evidence in this paragraph. There's a lot of information from other sources, which gives a lot of credibility for this paragraph. So the first time, you'll see that the writer's kind of introduced things in different ways. The first time the writer has kind of integrated the quote into the sentence, so starts out with her own sentence and kind of integrates the quote into it. It is important to note that money does bring more happiness for people living in impoverished places, such as in the third world, where nearly 3 billion people are living under $2 a day. And then in this next example, the person doesn't actually include a quote, but just really rephrases that quote in her own words. So she's paraphrasing here. But notice that each time the writer includes a quote or a paraphrase, she also includes an in-text citation at the end of the sentence to tell us where the quote came from. So this is looking really good, and there's just one more thing that the writer needs to do. The writer needs to make sure that all of these in-text citations are included on the Works Cited page. So remember that for this essay, you're also going to need to include a Works Cited page that gives all the publication information for your articles or your resources. So one of the really important things that you want to do, the most important rule with the Works Cited page, is that you want to make sure that the in-text citation, so here we have Layard 51, I'm going to put that in green. When we go to the Works Cited page, we see that Layard matches up. So like most of your English and humanities classes, you're going to use MLA format for your Works Cited page. And in that format, you want to make sure that the word in the in-text citation is always matching up with the first word on your Works Cited page. And that's so that your reader can really easily go back, if they're in your paper, they can say, oh, I really like this quote by Layard. I'd like to read the whole article. And, where can I go and find it? So they look at Layard. They come back to your Works Cited page. They see Layard here. It's really easy to find that information on the Works Cited page. When it comes to citing your sources in MLA style, there are many variations that you can use. But don't worry, you don't have to memorize all those variations. I have given you this resource, the Purdue Online Writing Center, Online Writing Lab on our Canvas page. So anytime you are looking up an MLA citation style, you can just go here and you might go to electronic sources, and you're going to find all of the information about how to do an electronic source. I'm going to have to do this better. So let's go back to our Works Cited page. You can see that when this person cited Layard, we come back here and we find out that Layard is a book. It's in print. We also know it's a book because the title is italicized, and you always want to italicize book titles. Let's say that we wanted to find Graham Hill. We're going to come down here, we're going to look at Hill, come back to our Works Cited page. Well, here's Graham Hill. This is all the information about where his article was published. So you can see that the in-text citations always are going to correspond to the first word of the entry on your Works Cited page. And that is to make it easier for your reader to find that information. Okay, thanks for listening. Hopefully now you know more about how to introduce quotations and create in-text citations. Thanks for watching this video.